Welcome to the latest episode of the Blazing Musket Podcast. We are back here for our August Roundtable as summer starts to wind down and fall awaits. We are here to talk about who has what left to play for in 2025. Our guests tonight include a couple of returners and a couple of new guests as well. So we will get to hear from Oliver of this parish at the Blazing Musket, who covers Hartford Athletic, and Mitchell is joining us for the first time as well to tell us about the Portland Hearts of Pine and how they are doing up in the great state of Maine. So we have Oliver and Mitchell making their debuts on this show. We have Jason, who's been on here a couple times from Raising Anchor, and Mike is the steady hand on the till that has been here for all 5 episodes so far. So, guys, let's get right into intros. We'll start off. We'll go with the 2 new guys, Mitchell, and then Oliver, and then Mike, and then Jason. So, who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do in the world of soccer?
Yeah, my name is Mitchell Ketchen. I'm from Winthrop, Maine, so I'm about an hour and 20 minutes north of Portland, depending on the traffic. So it's a big commitment to get down to Fitzy for match day, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I am the co-chair of the supporter group, the Dirigo Union, and I also co-host a couple of our different shows that we run, From the Forest to the Tide, and our post-match Pulse. I'm on pretty regularly, but other than that, just trying to herd the cats, the Psycho Hearts fans, and march us on to playoff dreams at the end of the season.
I'm Oliver Scholes. Thanks for having me, guys. I've been a Hartford Athletic season ticket holder since the beginning. Put my deposit down in 2018. Posting about the team on Reddit for a number of years before Sam asked me to start covering it for Blazing Musket about before the 2024 season. And that's about all I do is write about the team. I've not really been a big podcast guy, so I appreciate the ask to come on here.
Michael.
Oh, I thought we were going Jason next. I'm very sorry. I was just going big to little, right? My name's Mike. Obviously, you've heard from me. You hear my stupid voice all the time on this thing. I represent the Vermont Green and the Uniting Green podcast here. I should say the undefeated, invincible Vermont Green, national champions of USL 2.
And I'm Jason, over in Riverside or East Providence, whatever you want to call it. Me and Matt cover RAFC. We've been doing it now for quite some time. We started like the year before the team even started. We were just talking nonsense for almost a year. And we cover them every Thursday, 8 p.m. in podcast form.
Yeah, but Jason, now, last time we were recording, Matt, simultaneously on 2 podcasts at the same time. Like, he was, wrapping up with our podcast while you guys were interviewing a player. So that was...
I think there's literally a player interview going on right now while we are recording this podcast.
Oh, so, Monday night apparently is, you guys are recording on Mondays. It must not be the worst night of the week to get together and record a podcast. But, yeah, look, great
we
to
started
have...
with just...
Go ahead.
We started with one show, and then our shows were getting too long, and then what if we just did 2 a week? And so that's where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were doing, you guys were pushing 2 hours when the team didn't have a coach, players. It was pretty impressive. I remember thinking, well, what are these guys going to do when they have games? It's going to be like Joe Rogan. You guys are going to go for 4 hours.
We have to reel it in a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Oliver and Mitchell, again, really appreciate the 2 of you guys jumping on. Oliver, this is pretty well timed for you to come up because we usually spend a large portion of this show picking on Hartford Athletic and their inability to win soccer games, look like a coherent team, move themselves into a playoff position, keep a coach for more than 6 months. But Nathan's not here, and, we probably should start off with talking about Vermont Green, but honestly, it's a shock. Hartford is flying. They can't seem to lose. They just beat Rhode Island. They're in a playoff spot at the moment. They're in the semifinals of the Jägermeister Cup. I mean, is this I know you don't want to jinx it, but I mean, is this as good as it's been?
This is as good as it's ever been for Hartford. You one playoff appearance in 7 years, and that was a year where we beat up on a bunch of kids, right? 12 games against MLS 2 teams in 2020, in a year when MLS teams basically gave up on their 2 teams, right? They were playing 16-year-olds every week. And so that's the best season Hartford has ever had, right? Is that. And so to even be in like a playoff position this late in the year is a new experience for Hartford fans. But this is what everyone expected when Brendan Burke was hired, right? Like, you go at the end of the 2023 season, it's a disaster of the season, one of the like 5 worst seasons in USL Championship history. They go out, they bring in Brendan Burke, he starts bringing in these guys, Mishi and so on, and everyone's like, this is it. This is what's going to, make it work. And last season, it didn't really get there, right? We did go into the last week of the 2024 season with a chance to make the playoffs if we'd won 3 games in 7 days or whatever it was. But that wasn't really what people were kind of expecting, was like maybe get in by the skin of our teeth. And then this year it looked like a huge step backwards, right? Through the first 3 months of the season, it was like, this just isn't working. And so now, unbeaten in 8, which is the longest stretch in club history, something like 14 goals in the last 5 games, 6 games, like it's the best it's been. It's never been this good. And, it won't last forever, but it's certainly good to enjoy it while it's going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it must be a bit of a strange experience, but yeah, absolutely. Now, Mike, it actually can't get any better for Vermont Green, can it? I mean, have you reached the peak now?
I mean, I think that if I'm gonna be serious about it, we have to talk about maybe a peak. Have the Green peaked? Have they? Is this just part of like the process and finding a way to maybe move up to a USL 1 situation in a few years? I think that's, that is far away. I think this season was as much of a surprise to any of the supporters as it was to people looking in from the outside, or even the owners themselves. I think we all knew that like we had a team coming in. And obviously myself and Sam and Tyson get to talk to the owners in the off season, talk about some players that they're, that Adam Pfeiffer is hopefully bringing in, and doing a little bit of research and finding out, like, YouTube research is tough with NCAA players, but especially when they're coming from smaller schools. But when we had a guy like David Ajagby to talk about and to look into, all of that is right there. He's the Big Ten leading scorer last year, and he's moved on. He's moved on from Ohio State this year, but I think that, sure. I mean, this was a peak. We're still on a high as a club. Our supporters group, the Green Mountain Boys, we have just set up structure to be a true supporters trust. Off the back of raising $25,000 for migrant justice in 10 days. And a lot of that had to do with the success of the club and the success of the players. I don't know that, you can't expect going in every single year that you're going to be that team. You never know what you're going to get. It really does take a good core of returning players, USL 2 returning players, and guys who have maybe played in a USL 2 setup before, but for different teams, and bringing them in. You're not always going to have a guy like Musa Ndia and Zach Zenge coming back to your team, an Owen O'Malley, if you will. But yeah, I mean, we're in that area where it's like you have to start looking to the future, but also have to be aware that you could have a down season at any point. But what does a down season look like now? That you've gone through a season where you really, when you have a couple of draws that feel like losses, I think you're in a good spot.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's funny. Some of the talk, some of the pro-rel zealots, immediately jumped on, 5 seconds after the final whistle went, well, that's it. They've got to go up to League One now. Whereas, like Jason Davis, Jason Davis actually talked about Vermont Green quite a bit. lately, and he said, look, like there's really nothing wrong with just enjoying what this is, right? It's an undefeated season, and okay, yeah, it's only USL League Two, but like it's still it's a special thing. It doesn't happen all that often. So why can't we just kind of enjoy the moment? Because like you said, even next year in USL, you don't know that this is necessarily ever ever going to happen again. So yeah, it's been interesting to kind of see. The attention has been great, but two, hopefully you all are, taking some time to enjoy it for, for what it is. Now Mitchell, up in Maine, everything that happens up there is this is the first time for everything, right? So you don't necessarily have any, Oliver has 7 seasons of relative misery to compare this season to. Mike, that team's progressively getting better and better. RAFC themselves is only in their second year. But the Portland Hearts of Pine, last night they get a 3-2 victory away to Westchester. So where does that leave them in the table? And how are people feeling? A little bit past the halfway mark of year one.
Yeah, I think people are feeling really good. Obviously, we know how important Fitzpatrick Stadium is to our success after we've seen what's possible there with 5,700 people behind the team. But I don't think a home field advantage playoff spot is really within the grasp the way we've been playing this season. We have fought out a lot of really gritty draws. We find ourselves in 10th place, tied on points for 8th. So we're right on the cusp of a playoff spot as it stands. I think the things that are going to help us prevail in that are staying healthy. We've battled some injury troubles throughout the season, and then finally converting and finding that confidence up front. We need to start scoring some goals, and I think the tides will turn for Portland for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's just that they seem to be getting kind of better as the season goes on, that's maybe not what you would expect, but I think that's what that's certainly what you would hope for. Now, Jason, when we started doing this show 5 months ago, Rhode Island FC you were like the Golden Boys. It's not very hard to be doing better than the Revs, but you had a brand new stadium opening. You'd gone all the way to the USL Championship final in year one. You were taking the piss out of Hartford at every opportunity. I mean, you guys were top of the mountain here in New England, and things maybe look a little differently lately.
Yeah. I think the story of the season really is inconsistency. It feels like every time this team starts to build some momentum and you feel like they're starting to turn a corner, they just trip over themselves and keep, fumbling. It looked like the last few matches we kind of started to slowly put something together, but the attack is just not working for us. Weirdly enough, one of the top defenses in the league. Koke, before this last match, was one of the top goalkeepers in goals against. But the problem is we cannot score. And I don't know exactly what it is. A lot of us in the fan base have debated. Some of us think maybe it's system change. We kept a lot of the core group of players, but we brought in, a big name in Maxi Rodriguez from Detroit City. We stole him away. Fantastic player. But I don't think from outside anyone's looking at him and really thinking that he's made a huge impact on this team. You can clearly tell how talented he is, but he's not producing what we expected. Throw in some other returning names like Noah Fuson, the golden playmaker from last year, not producing the results. JJ's been injured half of the year. Chico's inconsistent, right? He'll get a hat trick against Portland, but then, he'll go 3-4 weeks without scoring a game. So it's been a tough season. I mean, that being said, it's only our second season. We've got a brand new stadium. I think that we're all trying to keep that in mind and say, you know what, it could be much worse. So just trying to see what we can do. The expectations are continuing to fall and fall as we get through the year, but still happy to have a team here.
Yeah, no, of course, absolutely right. I mean, no one's saying, forget, let's burn the stadium down and just go back to what we were doing before. But you had so much success in year one. Do you feel like that may have created, again, it's going to be a similar thing for Vermont Green next year. Like, look, just because we did that, it's not that easy, right? So do you think maybe that was kind of part of it, where let's say that playoff run doesn't happen last year, this year too would still be okay. It's only our second year, new stadium, still, we're still trying to kind of figure this whole thing out. Like, do you think that initial run all the way to a final maybe kind of put the expectations unreasonably high?
I definitely think it helped. I think a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon towards the end of the year. There were some of those playoff watch parties where we were, packing local bars to the point that the fire marshals were being called. Like the town was bought in all of a sudden. They're like, oh, we have a team and they're good. And everyone was on board. And now, I mean, we can't buy a goal sometimes at home. Like it's gotten a little better lately, but it's been a struggle this year. That being said, I've still seen a lot of positive outlook from just normal casual people online. If you go on to like Reddit or other kind of different various forums where they're not us sickos who are like locked in, people are like, they'll say, oh, hey, like that's a really nice stadium. It's a beautiful view. I had a great time. And they won't even talk about the fact that it was like a 1-1 middling draw.
No, I mean, that's good, right? Because, as someone that spends most of their time watching games at Gillette, when the game on the field isn't going very well, the rest of everything that's there is it's not great. The atmosphere is not great. The sight, you're not getting that, hey, at least we're in, this great soccer specific venue, or even like the other stadiums, the other teams here. Portland Hearts of Pine, okay, there's a track around it, but it's still kind of that intimate, close feeling. Hartford is a great place to watch a game as well. Now, Mike, this is my question. Come back to you, and then we'll come back to Mitchell and Oliver. But is that not gonna say a concern, but how do you, as a fan of the team, how do you kind of guard against, that happening next year? Like, let's say, look at Seacoast, right? They 2024, they won the USL League 2 championship. Their season this year, not quite as good, right? So it is possible to kind of have that drop. So, what do you kind of really like hang your hat on as a Vermont Green fan? Okay, you know what? Even if we have a mediocre season, it's still a great time because we have, A, B, and C.
I think the thing with a club like Seaboats United is that, when they do what they did in their championship season, that's all well and good, but they rely really, really heavily on their internal youth structure. They can pull from any of their youth clubs, from Maine to New Hampshire to Massachusetts, and when you rely too heavily on that, and you're not recruiting those big players from outside, it's a different kind of situation than a team like Vermont Green has, because Vermont Green doesn't have any kind of a youth setup or an academy setup or an MLS Next Pro setup like a Seagoats would have. So, so Vermont is a completely different situation. They also have buy-in from the community. They have buy-in from business people. The owners are constantly there. If you come to a game, you will see the three main heads running around during the game and doing their jobs. They're not sitting up in the booth enjoying the game. They're running around. Patrick is taking video with his cell phone. Sam is running around making sure people are recycling. Making sure like all the day-to-day stuff is working. Matt Wolf is constantly working on, he's on his laptop while game is going. Working on the visuals and that kind of stuff. There's buy-in from the TV stations, so it's likely going to be harder to have that type of a letdown, like they did with the New Hampshire team this year. But that's not to say that it can't happen. I always say, like, arguably Vermont's best, most talented team that they had was their second season. They had that first season, that Cinderella season, where they beat the Pioneers at the end of the season to make the playoffs, and then they won a playoff game. Inexplicably won a playoff game with a man down. In Sam McCann, with wonder goal, and that's great, but you have to follow it up the next season. And they just didn't. And it was partially because of the playoff structure for USL too, because there's 144 teams, right? So the way the playoff structure worked, we just didn't make the playoff that second year, but it was arguably the most talented team. You never know what you're going to get. Luckily, we have somebody like Adam Pfeiffer, whose entire job is now to recruit. He doesn't have to coach anymore. Doesn't have to worry about that. We have a great coach in Chris Taylor, who's taken what Adam has done and really improved upon it as much as he could. He's kind of a different style of manager, but still, it's that style of soccer that he plays. Adam knows who to recruit, right? So he is truly going out there and recruiting like a big time college recruiter would, but knowing that he can promise at least exposure to some of these bigger players when it gets to that time where they're possibly thinking about either being drafted or moving on to a League One or a championship team. So I think that the letdown is kind of hard. In terms of the stadium and that kind of stuff, yeah, I mean, a stadium would be nice. It's in Burlington. Where you're going to put it? I know that the team has had probably a number of offers from different cities around the state of Vermont, different townships, that kind of stuff. But in my estimation, you can't do that anywhere outside of the general Burlington area. It's not going to be the same buy-in from the community and that we have now. So the next question is, how are you going to do it with a stadium? The way that they have set up their mission, with social justice and climate justice, and then years down the road, how are you going to make that jump into the next level? Where you're paying players and you're having to travel and that kind of stuff. Logistics are going to be a big thing for Vermont Green in the coming seasons. That doesn't mean they can't make that jump. It's just going to be tough for them to do that in the future. It's the same type of thing with a Ballard, with a Lions Bridge, who have buy-in from their communities, from their, and so we're going to have to take a look at that and see what happens in the future. But I think they have some plans in place, and they'll let us know when they're ready.
Yeah. Mitchell, have you seen, like, Jason's talking about how they've got get-togethers even when the team is away, and there's a level of support that comes out even when the team isn't playing at home at Tidewater. Have you seen similar things like that? Can you talk a little about one? Are people getting together to watch the away games, in Portland itself, when the travel is too far away, which is often the case in League One with its current size? And then also, it seems like the traveling support, at least to the game that I was at down in Hartford, it seems like you had a good group that went out to Westchester last night. So how is that kind of all kind of developed? Like, the local support when the team isn't playing at home.
Yeah, it's quite vibrant, actually. So when the team's away and it's not a travelable game. Sorry, I drove from New York this morning. We have 2 watch parties. The DU has put together our own watch parties, kind of in an effort to bridge the gap outside of Portland for the fans that have to travel. We've done stuff in New Hampshire at the June Cork Pub. We've gone further north. We had a watch party that was just like DU members from the county that got together. There was like 25 people up in Presque Isle at a bar, getting the game on 5-6 hours north of Portland. Yeah. So the support is completely statewide. And then the traveling is really cool to see because Maine is pretty unique, and I think it's pretty similar with most of New England, or at least smaller towns in New England, where if you're on vacation and you notice a shirt that like from New England, like you start up a conversation, and it's a small world. And it's very evident with the Hearts. You're seeing the kit, you're seeing merch all over the country. It's popping up at every game, whether it's organized through the supporter group or just members that live outside of the state that are finally getting to see a game. It's really, really cool to see that kind of spread across the country, especially with how geographically demanding the USL is right now. And then the traveling, the big ones were Naples. We had about 75 of our own members. There was about 200 total Hearts supporters for the first league match. Obviously, the Jägermeister Cup matches have been easy to get to, seeing our New England counterparts. Really, really exciting taste to what New England soccer could be in the next couple of years. So really thankful to experience that in person. And then New York, yeah, we had about 40 people, 50 people go down last night to Westchester because that's our closest league opponent. So I'm excited to see what happens in the future. We've done some coach travel. Westchester was just full caravan. But the community is meeting up constantly outside of Hearts. We do a bi-weekly band chant practice and a DU member social. Recently we just did a family friendly beach day, so like the DU parents could have a place to bring the kids, and it's not about the game, it's just about building that community and getting to know each other because it's growing so fast. Our first game in Lewiston, we had about 150, 200 members. We're about to surpass 700 paying supporter group members in Portland. And
700?
So 700, and it's global. We have members in Germany, we have members in the UK. It's surpassed my wildest expectations what's going on, and I'm really excited to see what the future has, because I really feel like this is a pretty unshakable fan base up here.
Yeah, 700 is, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, I don't know, but I would imagine that that's either bigger or very close to bigger than the two supporters groups down in Foxborough. But 700 is nuts. But like
yeah, we're coming up quick on the heels of Detroit. The last I heard they were around 800, 850.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we're growing.
Yeah, I mean,
hopefully playoffs help that.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, no, absolutely. Now, Oliver, you know, we had somebody from the Bonanza on not too long ago, and you know, they said that, you know, obviously this is before everything turned around. You know, we could probably take a little bit of credit here at the Blazing Musket for helping get the word out that the team needed to start playing a little better. But you know, has that started to improve as the result? You know, it hasn't. Look, you know, we're not talking about a full season here, but you know, has the support started to maybe come up a little bit? Is there a little bit more, you know, excitement now that the team is getting on a decent run? Because things were, it was only 6 weeks ago we did that episode. You know, things were pretty bleak.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things. One, like you go back to 2019, and Hartford has always been better in the summer and fall, right? Attendance, you get into August, you get into September, and there's more fans at the stadium regardless. And that's just been the nature of support. And so, you know, there's some pretty empty stadiums earlier this season, and that's sort of historically been true. But from talking to people at the club, you know, there were some pretty low numbers in terms of like actual, you know, turnstile count earlier in the season. And it has got better, and the energy on Saturday obviously was great, right? Some of that was, you know, Rhode Island obviously brought a lot of fans. I don't know what the final count was, Jason, but it felt like there were a ton there, and it brought more people out. So the energy turns around, and I think I said to Nathan earlier this season that, like, you know, 3 wins in a row for Hartford and everyone feels better, right? Like this is sports all over, right? Everyone's living off the last game. Everyone's living off the last week, right? You turn it around and all of a sudden people are happy. And I think that's kind of what's happened this summer. You know, if we'd lost to Rhode Island on Saturday, everybody would be sad again, right? If Rhode Island had come in and hung 3 or 4 on us, it would have been all south again, right? So I think, it has turned around a little bit, but ultimately, I know Chris from the Bonanza, when I talked to him before he came on the podcast, he was saying they've lost something like half their members, and it wasn't a huge supporters group to begin with. You guys, Mitchell, you're talking about 700. I think the Bonanza maybe maxed out at about 100.
Yeah.
And there's one other supporters group which has never been as big, and so they've lost something like half their members over the last couple of seasons. And I don't think that's going to turn around just because we had, a run of 8 games unbeaten,
Sure.
right? That's going to be something that comes because the product is better on the field, but also, it's been a pretty contentious relationship with the front office. It's, I know, listen to you guys talk about it, there's this great relationship with the team. That's not been the case in Hartford ever, really.
Yeah.
And I know Chris talked about that pretty extensively, and that's something that if that doesn't come along, then some of these other things are never going to be the same way that they are for these other clubs in New England.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, it's a start, right? But I mean, if the Bonanza is going to get back to, 80, 90, 100 people coming out to games, I mean, it's going to take a little bit longer because, they had said when they were on, like, look, like we had people just flat out tell us, like, no, I'm not paying for this. And I think you're seeing similar happen with the Revs. If the Revs miss the playoffs this season, which the odds are they will. That's 3 years out of the last 4 where they haven't made the playoffs. They haven't won a playoff game since 2020. Like, that has an effect. Eventually over time, whether or not people are gonna turn out or not. Especially where all the games are on TV. You can just stay at home and watch the game on TV. All right, but look, now, Jason, we kind of put down RAFC a little bit when we get started here, but there's the possibility here that you all are 1 game away from a cup final, as is Hartford. And the way this season is going, I don't see any other way that this doesn't end up a Hartford, Rhode Island final in the Jägermeister Cup. But is that cup run, is that taking a little bit of the sting out of the struggles in the league?
I think it's definitely helping. I think if we were just 10th in the league and had nothing else going for us, I think fans would be a lot more upset. The fact that we have played almost a perfect cup run with the exception of the loss and penalties to Hartford, and then even the way that weird system works, it technically was listed as a draw. But I don't feel like it was, but for the records it is. So we'll go by that. But yeah, we don't have an easy opponent though. Sacramento Republic came over to Centerville Bank Stadium earlier this year and kind of gave us a bit of whooping. I'm hoping though, we have been inconsistent. We've seen some pretty good performances from RFC. So I'm hoping that they kind of take that as a last-ditch effort to really go for it because, I'm starting to wonder, like, are we even going to make playoffs? Our next 2 games are against Charleston and Louisville.
Tough.
Sure, sure. Last year we beat them, but that was completely different. That's you look at that and say that could easily be 0 points. And then at that point, everyone's starting to push the gap further and further away. This is a very competitive league. It's very possible we could still sneak into 8th place, but playoffs are going to look tough right now for RAFC, and Jägermeister Cup might be the only opportunity that they have to really kind of put some sort of shine on this first season at Centerville Bank Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, that is the nice thing about, as any Tottenham fan can tell you, a cup run can really kind of, soften the blow of a disappointing league season. So, I mean, do you feel like, let me ask you this. Let's say you do win. It's at home, right? So you're hosting. So that gives you a bit of a leg up. Sacramento's going to fly, all the way across the country, all that stuff. Do you want, I'm assuming this is a yes, but do you want Hartford in the final? And would beating Hartford in the final, club gets its second trophy? I'm assuming that depends on who you ask. If the Eastern Conference Championship counts as a trophy or not. Does that, hey, look, we missed the playoffs, but who cares, right? We we won a cup and we beat our local rival in the final. Does that kind of wash away the league season completely, or is the league too consequential to just kind of leave it to the wayside?
I think I would be mostly happy with that as long as the team at least kind of made an effort run to say, similar to like Hartford last year, right? They kind of turned it around towards the end of the year. Yep. They almost snuck into the playoffs. If you could at least feel confident that the team started to improve their performance, if they won the cup and they just stunk the way out the rest of the season, wouldn't particularly feel great. But at the same time, to win a trophy in your second year, like, you really can't knock that, right?
Yeah.
And especially if it were to be against our local rival Hartford, I think that would be huge for the fans. The one thing I would be curious, though, is at the end of the day, like, soccer teams, clubs, whatever you want to call it, they mean a lot to us, but they're still businesses. So you would wonder, how is the front office going to view that? That I don't know. I'm not sure if they would see that as successful to not have at least a playoff game or two. Even if at this point there's no way we're going to have any of those at home.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, that was not to bring up Tottenham again, but that was kind of a thing as well. It's like, okay, yeah, they won the Europa League, but they were a complete and total disaster in the league the whole season. And some people couldn't get past that, which is I suppose that's understandable. Mike being one of them. So look, Oliver, how important it. All right, this is a stupid question because it's not how the world works. You can win the Jägermeister Cup and beat Rhode Island in the final and miss the playoffs, or you can make the playoffs or lose in the semifinal. And obviously, none of this is a stupid, dumb clickbait question, but there it is. Which one would you rather have? You make the playoffs.
I take the cup. I take the cup. I take the cup. Yeah. Every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I think 7 years, right? Like of nothing, right? Of one playoff appearance. And yeah, would it be nice to make the playoffs? Of course, right? I think this team is well positioned to make the playoffs right now. But like, if it is going to be a tough run. There's 5 games in 15 days coming up. The squad is not huge. They're going to need to add to it. If you had to choose, I think, you've got Greenville coming to Hartford. You focus on that game, you get that win, and then if you have to go to Sacramento or you have to go to Rhode Island or you have either one of those teams coming to Hartford, that's what I'd take. I'd take that opportunity to get that silverware and say, we got one. We got something in the trophy case. And then, if the playoffs don't happen, then so be it.
Absolutely. Mike, as a neutral observer here, between these two teams, how much do you think the experience that Rhode Island would have from their playoff run last year versus Hartford, not being a recent playoff team, do you think that helps year over year? Like, let's say Rhode Island and Hartford find themselves in a final. Rhode Island's already been in a final. Hartford hasn't. So speaking of the experience of the Vermont, the Green, look, they won everything this year for sure, but they were behind, I believe, in every single game in the USL, in the USL League 2 playoffs. Like, does that experience, do you think that makes a big difference, or do you think just going into it saying, hey, we're just going to go out and play like this is a regular game because we don't know what a final feels like?
No, I think it's valid that, like, experience is a huge factor when it comes to cup runs, when it comes to playoffs, that kind of stuff. I think that losing, in a cup match or having, being in a position to win and not quite getting it over the line is actually even more helpful. It's so sure you have guys that like Dikwa and Koke Vegas and Fuson who were embroiled in large parts of that run that Rhode Island made last year, and so they have that experience. They know what it takes to get there, to do the job, but you still have to go out there and execute. And if you're not in the middle of if you're in the middle of the season and you're not executing the way you have been or the way you were able to in the past, you have to maybe start looking at the manager. Is it the tactics that have been figured out? Is it the players that just aren't performing this year? Did they get off on a bad run because they had, expectations of themselves going into this season? There's a lot of questions there. Hartford hasn't had that opportunity in the past. So, sure, while experience is a big deal, I think losing, in those situations is a bigger deal because you learn from your mistakes. You learn from those mistakes, and it helps develop leadership qualities. And I will bring up Zach Senge, every day of the week, twice on Sunday. He was part of that first Vermont Green team that didn't make the playoffs, that second-year team. He was an 18-year-old kid. It ended up getting drafted in the MLS Super Draft that year by Columbus. And didn't follow it up the next year with the greatest season. Last season he wasn't that great. This season he took that experience and built on it. So every single year you build on those experiences and you bring back those experiences, and you can push them on to the other players on the team and help them understand what it means to the fans, to the team, to the club. It's about building leadership qualities, and I think that some of these players from Rhode Island really need to step up because, like I said, whether it's the coaching or whether it's the team that had unrealistic expectations of themselves after a magical run, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe Jason and Matt have a better idea, but I don't think that necessarily means they have a leg up over Hartford Athletic. I would like to hope they do, because I am not so secretly a Rhode Island fan. But I have made the comments on this podcast that I think Vermont Green's team could beat Hartford this year. I don't know that now. We might have a better chance of punching up a little bit and playing to a draw with the Hearts, but it all comes down to leadership and having the experiences and building on your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Mitchell, on that point, when the Portland Hearts of Pine, when they played USL Championship, level teams in the Jägermeister Cup, did you, how did you look at those games? I mean, I imagine you look at those games as, look, the expectation is not that we're going to come out and get something out of this, but we're going to go and kind of measure ourselves, against a team from a higher league. But, how did you feel about those games? And did you feel that gap? Like, could you within the first 10, 15 minutes, like, okay, you can see why these guys are in the league that they're in and are on the money that they're on compared to our team here in League One?
I think with it being year one and getting to know the team, it didn't really have much of weight. If we want to look at it like that in the grand scheme of things, I think most of us really wanted to have a focus on the league, seeing where we stacked up. There's a lot of change. You have a couple of clubs leaving, I think 3, and then you have 5 teams coming in. We were more focused on what was right in our kind of direct path. But having the Jägermeister Cup go to a 2-league structure, give us the ability to get that experience early on in the season. I think those games against Hartford and Rhode Island were invaluable. And you saw what happened when Detroit and Pittsburgh came to town as well. So, being able to beat Hartford in the U.S. Open Cup in penalties, in the snow, in Lewiston, I think that's a core memory for a lot of people that are following this club, and we look back on that moment as a really special one. And then the stories of the preseason scuffles with Rhode Island and being invited down there and kind of given the little brother treatment, if you will. It's like, hey, this is what you can have in one year of saving and working hard. But we're our own team, and this is the first time Maine has had our own team where we're not looking to another state, New England, for direction. So now that we've had a half a season in the league, we got bounced out of the Jägermeister, we got bounced out of the U.S. Open Cup, albeit with some very memorable moments, very loud moments in the American soccer landscape. I think they were really good building blocks to show that we are capable of playing, with some of the best at that next level. Like going toe-to-toe with Rhode Island and really making a game of it early on in the season, coming off the back of the run they went on in their inaugural year. I think a lot of us had no expectation of doing what we did. But these young college kids that Bobby Murphy picked on to come represent our club, they're growing into men. They're boys to men in just a few months. They've played 2 seasons compared to what they're normally playing in one shot. They're working hard and they're blossoming in front of our eyes. I think right when it's time to do so. I think a lot of us were expecting us to be in this position at this point.
Yeah.
Thank God for that very, very handsome Nathan Messer, too.
We love him and his left foot. What a near post finish last night in New York.
Yeah.
In that Open Cup match, I was going to say, Portland Hearts of Pine nearly gave RFC a run for their money. I think that comes down to inexperience. Because if I remember correctly, RFC scored both their goals within about 5 minutes, right? That's one of those things where you give one up and you kind of get shell-shocked. You don't know what to do. We go in 2 up on halftime. That second half, Portland came out with something to prove. We had a player sent off. We were holding on. If you guys had a few more minutes, it felt like an equalizer would have came. We would have forced extra time.
Yeah, after doing it to Hartford just a couple weeks before, we were on the highest of highs at that point because it was like, okay, we're gonna ride this wave. Lewiston's gonna be its own thing, and we're gonna take this with us as long as we can. And then it kind of worked out perfectly. It was a perfect transition to Fitzpatrick. The timing worked out. Kind of helped mellow out some of the schedule congestion early on in the season and helped us focus on getting really gritty draws to start the year that are kind of proven to be pivotal points to pick up and not drop.
Yeah, now Mitchell, I mean, is there a lot of belief that the team is going to go and push on here and qualify for the playoffs in year one? And I think wherever they go from there might be. Do you think maybe you can make a bit of a run, or is it, hey, look, like let's just we can get in, and then anything beyond that is a bonus, or do people think actually no, we might be able to hang around for a little bit?
I think the confidence is high. We have nothing to lose. I think everything to gain. Like obviously the spotlight is on Portland right now with how everything's kind of started. But I think Bobby is a no-nonsense manager, and I couldn't pick another coach to be in the position that he's in with this team. It's a very, very hard ask to come in and develop talent, bring in the right guys to fit this profile. And he gambled. He gambled heavy on going young, bringing in very, very key veteran pieces like Mikey Lopez, like Patty Langlois, Sean Vinberg, and now with injuries, we've seen Sega Koulibaly come in, former Galaxy captain, and El Trafico winner. You've seen Azad Liati go down with injury, so we've brought in a little bit more height at the front with Noah Kvifta. So I think we're gonna hit our stride at the right time. I think the the key things that we've needed to work on have always been getting worked on throughout the year. Like, there hasn't been a 2-game stint that I can look at and say, yeah, this has been, like, they didn't work on this week in training. Like, there's very clear progress being made. Those relationships within the team are still being built. And with 12 games to play, I think as long as we get the job done in the regular season, secure a playoff spot, anything can happen from there, whether we're at Fitzy or not. I think this team is hungry, and we can play with anyone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think having been tested early in the season, like you said, I think that for sure goes a long way, come playoff time. And change gears a little bit here, but Oliver, in and amongst all this, great stuff going on down in Hartford, they have had a guy that has been banging in goals left, right, and center, all of a sudden abruptly move on, right? And this is a thing that, so you hear people say sometimes, well, I don't want my team to be a selling club, as if it's like you get to choose whether you're a selling club or not. There's maybe 4 or 5 teams on earth that can call themselves a team that we're actually not a selling club, right? The rest of us are just cogs in this big global market for soccer players. So can you talk a little bit about what has transpired? Who is this player? Where has he gone? And then just kind of a group discussion as to what do you do in these moments? How do you build a roster where if at any point somebody under the age of 23 comes in and starts having a flyer of a season, they might not be around for the end of it.
Yeah, so Mamadou Dieng, he was signed by Hartford ahead of the 2023 season. I think he was 19, or maybe just turned 20 when he was signed. And he was a little bit of a kind of an unknown. He'd never played in a professional league before that. He had some academy time. He'd been kicking around various places. And he got a little bit of buzz in the preseason last year, scored a couple of goals. But was sort of like, who knows? Who knows when this guy is going to be ready or if he's going to be anything. And then he had to start our second game of the year last year. Mario Williams came into the season as number 9, and then he goes on international duty with Jamaica. Momo has to step in the game against Birmingham, and he probably should have had a hat trick in that game. Like, he had the opportunities, but in watching it was all the other stuff that he did. He did everything that you want from a number 9, his ground coverage, the way he pressed, his intelligence. And I was just watching, I was like, this guy is ready. He's ready to play in this league, and he's probably ready to play in another league. He just has all of these tools. He just needs a stage. And it took half a season for him to really get on the pitch and get the minutes. And when he did, he was, as good as any forward in the USL over the back half of last season. When you get under the hood with the numbers, I think he might even have been better than Nick Marcanic, and Marcanic was the Golden Boot winner, right? Record-setting goal scorer. And then it came into this season, and he sort of looked like he'd taken a step back, right? We were talking about the U.S. Open Cup game, and he probably should have scored 2 in regulation in that game, and put it to bed, right? And denied Portland that great moment, and he was back to that profligacy, right? He wasn't scoring, he was putting the ball wide, and it just looked like he had just completely regressed. And then, I don't know, the weather warmed up and so did he, and he got hot again. And, the buzz there had been in the offseason that he might be on the move was back. And every time I talked to Brendan Berg, he was saying, like, it's going to come. It's coming soon. People are calling. MLS is calling. Europe is calling. And he's gone to Minnesota United now. It was announced right after the Jägermeister Cup game last week. He scores in that game. He's wearing the captain's armband. Obviously, everybody in the club knew he was going, right? The ink was probably still wet on the paper. And it gets broken Thursday morning that he's leaving for a pretty good deal, rumor, kind of putting it over $300,000 initially and a pretty substantial sell-on fee. If they can do what they did with Tani Oluwasi, then, that's a good deal for Hartford. But the back half of that, right, it's great for the player, right? He's clearly ready for what's next. Hartford can't support whatever he needs to develop next. Maybe Louisville City could, but like no team in the championship really is going to be able to support, what a player like that needs for more development. So it's great for him to move on, to what's next. But then there's this huge gaping hole, right? Like 23 goals across 2 seasons, 12 this year, right? Nobody on the roster is going to fill that, directly. Kyle Edwards is having a great year. He's got 9 goals. He's been a super sub. He's got 5 off the bench this year, but he doesn't really ever seem to have had the legs to go 90 minutes week in, week out. He has to be managed. You have other guys. The goals came from other places. On Saturday, Carriaga getting his first in the league this year. Owen Pressis, 19-year-old kid in his first start outside of Next Pro, and he scores. But that's probably not like sustainable, right? Over the last 10 or 12 games, you're going to need to find somebody to be a little bit more reliable scorer. And so part of it is when you got a feel like that, you gotta reinvest it. You got to go and find somebody to kind of fill the gap. You can't be like, well, we got our $300,000 or whatever it is. We're just going to slip that in our back pocket and say it's good. Some portion of that, whether that's you call up Miami and say, hey, are you guys giving up on the season? You sent Bill Hamid to Tampa for basically nothing. You want to sell Bonfilio too, maybe? Or you call Mark Briggs in Birmingham and you're like, it seems like you don't like any of these strikers that the last guy signed. You sent out Danny Trejo. Do you want to sell Ronaldo Damas too, right? Like maybe you make a phone call like that, or maybe you're looking for a veteran, someone who's on the street. Those are pretty slim pickings, but there's a couple of options. But you got to do that. You got to go find somebody who can be a little bit of a presence up there. And also remember that you have other guys on the roster like Mishi Galina, who was the young player of the year not that long ago, right? He doesn't seem to have quite had it in Hartford over the last couple of seasons, but this is a guy who at one point was like one of the most electric talents this league had, right? And you got to find that back in him too over the home stretch. And so if you bring in a veteran and you find what you've got from guys like Kyle Edwards and Mishi, you can kind of plug those holes. The other thing too, though, is watching this team, it feels like at the moment they just believe that whoever gets the ball in the box is going to put it in the back of the net. Like it doesn't matter. Marlon Hairston has like 2 goals in his career, right? And he's scoring, and so there's also that part too where when it's clicking, guys are the ball bounces for you, right? That's kind of the nature of the game. When it's not bouncing for you, like everything goes 6 yards over. When it is bouncing, like I could get out there and put it in the back of the net because that's the way it's going, right? Like it's hot. So I think it's a little bit of everything. It's reinvesting some of that money. It's making sure that you feel like the guys who are there who have maybe not been quite producing at the level that you would hope for when you sign them are maybe able to elevate it. And also just having the belief, right, that they've got this kid Obalola. Like, is he the next Jang? Is he the guy who, when you give him some minutes, he's going to pop out there and suddenly be the next guy who can get sold for $300,000 or $400,000 or more? That's kind of you talked about being cogs in the machine. That's kind of where you have to be as a club at this level. Like, I spent my life following lower division football in England. Like, that's it. You have a good player, he's going to be gone. So you got to have a plan. You got to have somebody else coming up. That's why you have to invest in your own scouting, why you have to invest in your own academy, all these things if you're going to be a professional club. And it's a bummer from a Hartford perspective to lose him right now, to lose Jang right now, but it's great for the player and probably good for the club in the long run for other players to see that you can come to Hartford and get that next move, right? That you can, and that Hartford won't stand in your way, right? That the club isn't gonna hold out. I know a lot of fans were upset and why now and complaining about kind of, it's the business side of things. And the reality is, if you stand in a player's way, then the next Mamadou Jang is going to be like, well, I'll go somewhere else. I'll go to Louisville where I know they'll sell me, right? If I'm good enough.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I think that is definitely part of the challenge. And Jason, does this kind of lean towards you've got to try and have depth. You've got to try and have this next man up kind of mentality, so that if you do have a young player who breaks out, or or even you brought up earlier, the situation with Maxi Rodriguez. I thought at the time when they did that signing, I was like, oh well, that's it. That's the final piece of the puzzle. He's a fantastic player. I saw him play maybe 15, 20 times for Detroit. It's like, that's it. This guy is going to come in, and there's no way they're not going to score goals now. So how do you manage these types of situations where if a young guy does really well, he's probably gone, but then you make a commitment to an older established player, and it's a sport where you don't necessarily know if it's going to work out that well.
I mean, yeah, every signing is a gamble to a certain extent. You can definitely kind of to a certain extent figure those bets out by maybe really finding an identity and a profile and really having a great understanding of what you are as a team and what you want to do and what those missing pieces are. We have a young coaching staff, so they're not going to get every single thing right. We've seen really high highs last year. We've seen some up and downs this year. So I think there's definitely a learning curve for some of those signings. I like Oliver mentioned a really good point in terms of there's a reality of if you are willing to sell players, that lets other people know I can go to this team and they're not going to get in my way. Yep. There's a reality of the economics behind these soccer teams. I think there's a balance that you have to find, right? There are certain guys who their probably peak is USL championship, right? So how do you find that core, build a team around them, and you find a Zhang, a star who can maybe carry you through a season to take you to that next level to hopefully get you, some sort of trophy, and you're kind of constantly looking for what's the next young up and coming talent while trying to maintain that core of a team and an identity to continue on like at least a bare minimum of like excellence year after year.
No, I think the balance of, like you said, the balance of the team where you have, it's similar to MLS. You want your core guys to be MLS level players that are, like somebody like a DeJuan Jones and like Brandon Bye. 26, 27, 28. They didn't get that early move to Europe. They're good MLS players, but you're not too worried that at any moment they're gonna turn around and disappear. But Mike, Vermont, these guys can go wherever they want, whenever they want. So how does Vermont go about building a team where in a lot of those games you felt like when they went to the bench, the level there was no drop off in the playing level. If anything, sometimes when they went to the bench, the level went up higher. So how does Vermont, they have to deal with this in a much more severe way where, a lot of these guys might be here for one season, maybe 2 seasons, but eventually, if they're good enough, not only will they not, you're not signing these guys to multiple year contracts because they're amateurs. So how does Vermont build a roster in that type of environment where a guy could be here today and he could be off somewhere else tomorrow?
Listen, lots of times they're off midway through the season. Guys like Amoni Thomas, guys like Stefan Njike, they get called back to their universities. They get called back. Gevork Diarbian is one of those guys at Revs 2 right now who got called back by the Revolution in his season after being just absolutely electric for four plus games. But you have guys like Njike who get called back early. Amoni Thomas got called back early because he's so young. And GK is, I think, property of Vancouver Whitecaps, right? But like Amoni got called back because he's 18 years old. He's an underclassman at Wake Forest. He got called back because he needs to get those reps in early season. The kid is electric. He wants to come back to Vermont next year. He's not coming back. I wouldn't want him to come back because his skill level is far and above USL 2, and that was very apparent from day one. So we get a lot of these guys in their first season. Aitor Bjorgolfsson, like coming out of Norway. This guy, it was just clear that a lot of these guys were too good for this league. And their colleges again don't want them to get injured because they have an investment in them. The USL 2 is a fickle league, man. And so the way that Pfeiffer goes about recruiting these players is that we know what kind of talent some of these players are. And he'll tell them, we know the talent that you can bring. We're building a very, very, very deep roster for those eventualities. We were lucky that, we had guys that left and came back. Julian Labordelou being one of them. We had the French Connection. We got lucky in that they were able to come back. That Pfeiffer was able to convince their college coaches that they wouldn't play more than 60 minutes. No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't injure them. And it was a real testament to some of these players that did leave and then come back. Arnaud Tatavan is the other one. That really shouldn't have come back, but they did because they felt that deep connection to the team, to the club, to the city, and that's a big deal. And I think that's kind of what Vermont brings. But we would never begrudge a player for leaving, because they're going to go on to bigger and better things. Nathan Messer being one of them, going to Rhode Island, right? He scored that banger of a goal in the Open Cup game, their first Open Cup game, and he's continuing to do it, in Portland. We wanted him to leave. We didn't want him to come back because we knew what kind of a talent he was. We don't want players like Gavork to come back. We don't want players like Amoni Thomas to come back because we want to see those players go on and do big things. And I think a lot of them can. Like Benny Prego is out. He's playing in the second division in Portugal right now. So, we as a fan base understand that these players aren't coming back, or and if they do, then we're very lucky. We're blessed to have them back, and it's just one of those things that we as fans know comes out of a USL2 team, and that's why the work is very, very hard. You just got to build a really, really deep roster so that if these players leave, you have guys that can step up and make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of makes it harder to accept because right? The deal going in, right? They're probably not going to be here for very long, and the whole idea is they're going to come in here and then they're gonna move on to something bigger and better. You also have like Jano Vizzini is playing down for South Georgia Tormenta. He's been kind of hot and cold, but he had a couple goals recently. I don't think anyone was really surprised that he latched on with a professional team either. Now Mitchell, I went to Rhode Island against Portland Hearts of Pine down in Rhode Island. I went with a friend of mine. He lives in Rhode Island. He's one of the best youth soccer coaches in the state of Massachusetts, which he would say is not true, but it is. We got about 15 minutes into the game, and he turns to me and he just goes, "That guy there?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." I said, "That's Masasashi Wada." He's like, "Why is he in this game? He's way too good for this league." I'm like, "Well," I said, "Well, RAFC's in the championship." He goes, "Yeah, no." He's like, "Why is this guy here?" Is there anyone else on the team this season that the fans kind of feel like we should really try and appreciate what this guy is doing because it's great, but he might not be here. He might not be here next year.
Yeah, first one, Hunter Morse. He has been Mr. Consistent. Saved our ass last night a few different times. And made it a really tough night for JC Aubergeon. He's consistently showed up for us, and I think he deserves bigger and better things in net. But I know that's the hardest position on the pitch to really like find your footing, and earn a spot. The further you move up the pitch, like Michel Pounangeron, our first signing in club history. He is kind of invisible when it comes to the stat sheet, but what he does to run our midfield is invaluable. And then Ollie Wright on the left side obviously already has some experience at higher levels. It has definitely got the personality for bigger and better things. But it's hard for, I think, us to look ahead and kind of guess who could be staying, who's going, because every single player on the team feels like they love being here, feels like they want to be here. Another name I already brought up, Sega Koulibaly, MLS veteran, coming back from a knee injury and just reached out to us. He saw what was going on in Portland and was like, yeah, I'll go there. I want to make that step back to playing. I think the culture that Bobby and Alex and Yuta have established, Yuta instrumental in getting Masashi Wada here.
Yeah.
The culture they've established so early on is creating a lot of buzz, and a lot of players want to come here to play because they know this is a stepping stone. This is a place to play in front of people, get good professional minutes, grow my game, and put myself in a position to go to that next place because there are so many eyes here. And I think it's easy to do that when the product's good too. So I'm curious to see if that keeps up, and I hope that it does keep up because it's been a very exciting season watching this young talent develop. But I think it's kind of like this weird mix of USL2 and the championship where we don't really know what to expect out of these recent D1 or D3 graduates that are here. They could be here for 1 year. They could be here for 4 years if they kind of develop over the next season or two into that USL1 player. But you have very clear, hungry talent. You look at Evan Southern. If he was healthy all year and was getting minutes, I think a lot more people would be saying his name. So I'm excited to see what happens, but I also think the prospect of promotion and relegation on the horizon is going to change the way that players look at teams and markets and the ability to move to that next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the kind of the theme between all four teams here is definitely there's got to be some compelling reason for players to come and play here because they have other options. They have other places that they can play. So whether it's, hey, look, if you come here and do well, we're not going to stand in your way. Or you're going to come up to Vermont, you're going to go up to Portland, we're going to give you the time of your life. We're going to give you great support. Same thing down in Rhode Island, brand new stadium, good facilities. Like, we're going to give you as good of an experience as we possibly can. And if word gets around between, whether it's college coaches or agents or the players themselves saying, oh, no, hey, look, if you go there, you're going to be well looked after and taken care of. In contrast to like MLS Next Pro, you're playing similar age players that you see in League One or USL League Two. They're playing in front of, essentially their parents and some of their friends, and maybe 15 other people and a guy named Josh. Like, it's just not. It's not even a comparable experience. And so I think it's definitely it's a good opportunity for players to develop and get better. But again, obviously it's leading to a lot of success across all of these teams. For however long is it they end up being with the team. All right, we're pushing on an hour and 20 minutes here. We're not going to go into who we support in Europe, which is good. Mike and I can delay our argument about the direction that Tottenham is headed in or should be headed in for another month. So we'll have that showdown maybe in October, November when the season starts to slow down a little bit. So just to wrap up here quickly, just again let everyone know how it is you contribute to the world of soccer, where people can find your work, where people can find you on social media, and we'll start with Oliver, and then Mitchell, and then Mike, and then Jason.
Yeah, you can mostly find me on Blazing Musket writing about Hartford. Probably a couple articles coming out this week. Allegedly, there's a Hartford signing coming, so I'll be writing about that, and still shit posting on Reddit sometimes. So if you like to use Reddit, you can find me in the Hartford Athletics subreddit.
Yeah, I'm Mitchell, co-chair of the Dirigo Union. You can find us at dirigounion.com or on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, From the Force to the Tide, Dirigo Union Podcast. Should get you there. I'm either at home or at Fitzpatrick cheering on the Hearts. I'm not at those two places. I'm at the Portland Zoo.
So yeah, I'm Mike, again, United in Green. We do a podcast every Thursday, and you'll be able to find us supported by the Blazing Musket. I don't do any writing. I just don't have time for it. And I'm not that great. You wouldn't enjoy my stuff. But Yeah, every Thursday we do a podcast. We're going to probably be doing monthly podcasts throughout the winter as we come into the U.S. Open Cup, but we do have a couple of more before we really sign off for the season. We're going to have the gaffer Chris Taylor come on, and this week we have the Heart Attack Kid, Owen O'Malley, is coming on to talk to us for an hour. We'll get some thoughts and feelings about his career and the trajectory that it's taken. We might get some surprises out of it, so we'll see what happens. But we have at least 2 or 3 more episodes before we close it out for the season. And you can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms, and again on the Blazing Musket. So.
Yeah, me and Matt do a podcast every Thursday, 8 p.m. We do a live show. We contribute that podcast to the Blazing Musket. Matt is probably a pretty good writer, but I don't think either of us have any time for that either. We put so much work into our podcast there and our socials. You can, wherever podcasts are available, you can find us, Raising Anchor. We're on all the socials at Raising Anchor or at RAFC Podcast. Just trying to get through this season.
Hey, come on! Next time we do the show, you could be, you could be talking about being in a Jägermeister Cup final.
I hope so. Still getting over that, that loss on Saturday was a bit rough, so.
No, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we seem to have an El Clamico every time we have an episode. But yeah, look, like all these guys mentioned, you can find all their podcasts. You can find Oliver's writing. You can find this all on the Blazing Musket, and of course, you can find this podcast as well. We are on all the places where you get your podcasts from. We do post every episode in podcast form and as a video on the Blazing Musket website as well. We are also starting to put some on the full show, but also shorter segments and clips on YouTube. We have an intern, Ben Clements, who is working on that for us. And Sam Minton, of course, who's the executive producer of the podcast, is working on that well. So you can find us on YouTube a little bit more. We're trying to grow our YouTube channel. And you can find all these guys, all their podcasts, all their work on theblazingmusket.com. So please do check out the Blazing Musket. Check us out on YouTube. And if you have not already, please do like, subscribe, and leave us a comment about this podcast if you have been enjoying it so far. And hopefully we'll have you all on back next week. We're going to talk a little bit about the U.S. men's national team. So that should be fun. There's just a couple little narratives there we can touch on for a little bit. But until then, guys, as always, appreciate the time. And thank you for coming on once again.